A young woman named Michelle hastily packed essentials. She was very nervous and hesitated for a long time before taking her smartphone to make a call. Finally, Michelle left, leaving her keys on the shelf. She had a long way to go. When Michelle stopped at a gas station, she noticed a pickup truck parked nearby, but she didn't think much of it. Michelle continued driving even at night. Ben kept calling her constantly, unable to believe that his beloved had run away. He begged her to come back, but Michelle hung up the phone. On the radio, it was reported that electricity suddenly went out for unknown reasons in many cities today. Distracted by another call from Ben, Michelle got into an accident. Sometime later, the woman woke up and found that someone had given her a drip while she was out. Michelle was horrified to discover that her leg was chained. This place looked like a basement. Michelle's items were also here, but she wouldn't be able to reach it even if she wanted to. Desperately trying to escape, the woman cried helplessly. She didn't want to believe that all of this was really happening to her. Using the stand for the drip, Michelle tried to reach for the phone again. Finally, she succeeded, but there was no signal here. Suddenly, there were suspicious noises nearby. A minute later, a man with a gun entered the room. He brought food to the woman. Michelle begged the stranger not to touch her and let her go. The man only said that he was concerned about her health and brought her crutches. According to him, no one was looking for Michelle, including her boyfriend. The man left, locking the heavy iron door. Michelle picked up a tool he accidentally dropped and was able to free herself from the handcuffs. Since her leg was broken, Michelle couldn't walk without crutches. Putting on her jeans, she tried to figure out how to escape from here. Sharpening one of the crutches, the woman made an improvised weapon and waited for her kidnapper. However, the man did not show up for a long time. Michelle noticed a ventilation grill and using matches, lit paper and put it in the ventilation, hoping that the smoke would attract the kidnapper's attention. The fire alarm went off. When the man burst into the room, Michelle attacked him, but he quickly disarmed her and injected her with sleeping pills. When Michelle woke up, she saw the man sitting next to her. He brought her food again. Michelle begged him to let her go, but the man assured that there was nowhere to go. He saved her life by taking her. Michelle did not understand what was happening. Then the man told her that they had been subjected to either a chemical or a nuclear attack. They are now in the bunker under his farmhouse. When the man was coming back here, he saw that Michelle had been in an accident. It was at that moment that he decided to save her life. What Michelle heard seemed like complete nonsense. She said she urgently needed to go to the hospital, but the man argued, saying that the consequences of a chemical attack were very serious. The air is contaminated, and for at least the next 2 years, it is not safe to go outside. Fortunately, the man had time to prepare for the attack. Michelle asked for permission to call her family, but the man said it was impossible. Everyone who remained outside died. Suddenly, there was a loud noise in the next room. Apologizing, the man left. Michelle heard him yelling at someone. When the man returned, he looked angry and told Michelle that she should be more grateful to him for saving her. Introducing himself as Howard, the man left. Michelle managed to sleep a little. Soon she was awakened by strange noises. The door was open. Gathering courage, Michelle left the room. There were huge stocks of food in the warehouse. The unknown guy frightened her, explaining that they were in the bunker. According to Emmett, he had been here for a couple of days. Michelle only wants one thing, to get out of here. She was stunned by the fact that Emmett believed in the legend of a chemical attack. Their conversation was interrupted by Howard, who showed her the bunker. Apparently, Howard was very well prepared. The bunker has everything necessary for comfortable living. Howard explained the rules and escorted Michelle to the toilet. Michelle couldn't do it in front of strangers, but Howard said he didn't trust her yet, so he wouldn't leave her unsupervised. It was time for dinner. Michelle saw magazines that, according to Howard, used to belong to someone named Megan. He did not explain who Megan was, only saying that she was no longer with them. There was a power outage, which theoretically could have been caused by a passing car. Michelle tried to convince Howard to call the police, but he reminded her that there was no one left outside. Michelle became wary when Howard decided to introduce her to Frank and Mildred. He escorted her to the main door leading out of the bunker. All the doors were very thick and reliable. Looking out the window, Michelle saw the bodies of pigs. According to Howard, this happens to any living creature that inhales infected air. Michelle noticed a familiar pickup truck near the house. It was exactly the same one she had seen at the gas station the night of the accident. Unlike Emmett, Michelle was still not convinced of the veracity of Howard's words about the chemical attack. Emmett told Michelle something about Howard. It turned out that he was ex-military. He had bought this farm a long time ago. Emmett knows this because Howard hired him to build this bunker. The man was obsessed with conspiracy theories, but until recently, Emmett did not believe him. Michelle was surprised by this. Until this moment, she had thought that Emmett had also been kidnapped. However, Michelle is still convinced that Howard is not who he claims to be, as it was he who crashed into her car on the road. Emmett dispelled the woman's doubts, stating that he had seen the attack with his own eyes. There was a bright flash, after which the entire horizon turned red. Seeing this, Emmett immediately rushed to Howard's shelter. Michelle was sure she recently heard the sound of a car engine above the bunker. Emmett said it was impossible. Their conversation was interrupted by Howard, who announced that dinner was ready. Howard keeps a bunch of keys on his belt. He told Michelle that she would now have to take on the responsibility of cooking. Emmett wouldn't stop talking. Howard didn't like it and asked the guy to shut up. Michelle was silent all this time, looking at the bunch of keys on the man's belt. Realizing that the bunker owner was annoyed by the chatter, Michelle followed Emmett's example and began to talk out loud about all sorts of nonsense, flirting with the guy. Furious, Howard hit the table with his fist. He shouted that he would not tolerate insults in his house. Howard demanded an apology. Michelle complied, unnoticed taking his keys. Howard quickly noticed the keys were missing. Hearing sounds above the bunker, Michelle knocked Howard out with a bottle, neutralized Emmett, and ran to the exit. Howard ran after her, but Michelle managed to lock herself in the room that served as a transitional area between the bunker and the exit. Howard begged Michelle not to open the door. Michelle saw headlights outside the window. Suddenly, a wounded woman started banging on the door, begging to be let in. Michelle was in shock. Howard said that infected people should never be let in, or it would end badly for all of them. Looking at the woman's face, burned from radiation, Michelle realized that Howard was telling them the truth. Michelle didn't open the door, and then the woman started banging her head against the armored glass. After that, Michelle couldn't come to her senses for a long time. She couldn't realize that everyone she loved had died. Howard admitted that he was responsible for her accident. When he found out that the attack was starting, he was in such a hurry that lost control of the car. It happened accidentally, but Howard still felt guilty. That's why he decided to save Michelle. Howard gave the guest Megan's clothes and told her that the woman knocking on the door was his neighbor. Some people managed to survive the attack, but they couldn't be helped anymore. Michelle was scared when Howard asked her to stitch up his wound, but there was no choice since she was the one who attacked him. After sterilizing the needle, Michelle did it. Later, Howard gave the woman the items he found in her car. He also showed Michelle a photo of his daughter Megan, who adored French culture. After the divorce, Howard's ex-wife took their daughter to Chicago. Howard tried for a long time to convince them that he did everything for their safety, but they didn't listen. Emmett and Michelle couldn't sleep for a long time. They told each other about the things they regretted, and now it's too late as the old world no longer exists. Michelle has been running away from difficulties all her life. That's exactly what she regrets now. From now on, Emmett, Howard, and Michelle learn to live together because they are now one family. They had a lot of time to spend in the bunker, so they thought of different things to do to pass the time. One day, the walls in the bunker shook. From the sounds, helicopters were flying over the bunker. Since Howard used to be a serviceman, he could tell it was something alien. In Howard's opinion, that chemical attack was just the first phase. Now the enemy is likely to focus on destroying all survivors like them. An alarm signal sounded, indicating that the air filtration system had broken down. It turned out that the pump had stalled. Since Michelle was the thinnest, only she could crawl into the ventilation to fix the pump. Michelle knew nothing about mechanics, but Howard had given her detailed instructions on what to do. Following the instructions, Michelle, holding a flashlight, crawled into the ventilation shaft. Michelle was able to start the pump. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to a ladder leading to the upper hatch. Through a small window, Michelle saw a clear blue sky. The words "help" were scratched onto the glass. What Michelle saw horrified her. She realized that Howard was not who he claimed to be. An earring found on the floor confirmed her suspicions. When Michelle returned, she told Emmett about it. In her opinion, Howard had done something to Megan. It turned out that the photo Howard had shown them was not Megan, but a girl named Brittany who had disappeared 2 years ago. Now Michelle and Emmett were wondering what to do next as there was nowhere to run since the air was contaminated. They tried to behave as if nothing was wrong so that Howard wouldn't suspect anything. Michelle had an idea. Since she had studied to be a designer, she could sew protective suits for them. They would have to use improvised materials. Emmett stole everything they needed, trying not to arouse Howard's suspicions. Taking advantage of the fact that Howard was distracted disinfecting the rooms, Michelle and Emmett began to act. Michelle made drawings, figuring out how to build gas masks with her own hands. This took a lot of time. For that matter, they had to do it secretly. If Howard found out about this, it would be the end for them. That evening, the company played guessing words. Emmett and Michelle began to suspect that Howard was onto them, but it turned out he was just messing with them. At night, Michelle continued to work on the suit. Hearing strange noises, she hastily hid all the materials under the mattress. Howard entered and said he needed help. The man also summoned Emmett and showed them a large barrel that needed to be moved into the bathroom. It turned out that the barrel contained hydrofluoric acid. Howard explained that this substance breaks down most biomaterials upon contact. Then Howard took out scissors and a stationery knife, demanding to know what they needed the items for. The man began to melt the objects in the acid, threatening Michelle and Emmett that if they didn't tell the truth, they would suffer the same fate. Emmett took the blame, lying that he wanted to take the gun away from Howard to get Michelle's respect. The guy apologized. Howard said the apology was accepted and took his life with a shot. Michelle couldn't even scream in shock. Howard hugged her, saying that Emmett was making weapons, so he was dangerous. Now they would stay here alone and be completely safe. Howard took Michelle to the room because it was better for her not to see what was going to happen next. The woman found Emmett's driver's license. Later, Howard brought her sweets as a gesture of reconciliation. Now, according to him, they would become a happy family. As Howard went to prepare dinner, he left Michelle alone. She couldn't hold back tears, feeling responsible for Emmett's doom. Despite everything, she continued working on the suit. Hearing footsteps, she hastily hid it. Howard came in and said dinner was ready. A screw fell off the ventilation grate. The man didn't know that there was the homemade gas mask in the ventilation, but he thought it was suspicious that the screws were unscrewed. Throwing Michelle off the mattress, Howard saw the protective suit. Taking advantage of the moment, Michelle escaped. In one of the rooms, she stumbled upon a container containing what was left of Emmett. Howard caught up with her. He was angry at Michelle's ingratitude for saving her life. Tipping the barrel of acid on Howard, Michelle returned for the suit and gas mask. It turned out that Howard survived despite severe burns. Because of the acid, a fire broke out, so Michelle had little time. She crawled into the ventilation while Howard stabbed the metal with a knife. He begged the woman to stay with him, as outside the bunker was something she couldn't even imagine. But Michelle wasn't going to listen to the psychopath, and putting on the protective suit, knocked out the lock, preparing to leave the bunker. The hatch cover was heavy, but Michelle managed to lift it and found herself on the surface. It was quiet and completely deserted around her. However, when Michelle got into the pickup, she tore her suit. In a panic, the woman taped the damage with Scotch tape, but seeing birds in the sky, she realized that the air was not contaminated. She took off the gas mask, realizing that it was all Howard's elaborate deception. Suddenly, sounds were heard nearby. First, Michelle saw some kind of flying machine nearby, then there was an explosion. Michelle was horrified to see an alien ship approaching. She ran from the pickup truck to another car, but the alarm went off, giving her away. Hiding in the shed, Michelle watched through the gap between the planks as a terrifying alien creature emerged from the cornfield. Michelle started searching a body in the hope of finding the keys when suddenly the alien jumped onto the roof and then entered the shed. Finding the remote, Michelle was able to distract the creature's attention to the car. Taking advantage of the moment, the woman escaped. Suddenly, a huge alien spaceship appeared in the sky, illuminating everything around with green light. Michelle ran away. The first thing she did was put on her gas mask again because the alien ship began spraying green poisonous gas. There was an explosion. Seeing the alien, Michelle hid in the car. The creature tried to penetrate the inside of the cabin. Moreover, the giant ship was preparing for a new attack. When Michelle saw a lighter and a combustible substance, a plan emerged in her head. She set fire to the paper and, waiting for the ship to be directly above her, caused an explosion. Waking up, Michelle realized that the worst was behind her. She couldn't quite comprehend what had happened. It turns out that while she, Howard, and Emmett were in the bunker, aliens had taken over the Earth. Michelle started the car and set off. The radio reported about a camp in Houston where surviving people were preparing to drive the alien invaders from Earth. That's exactly where Michelle was headed. In the final scenes, we see an alien spaceship in the lightning.